This amendment ensures that every new genetically engineered plant destined to enter our nation's food supply goes through an FDA safety review. Additionally, this amendment improves our bill by aligning USDA and FDA responsibilities to ensure that a thorough and complete review of these products is done.
1599 is a balanced approach that reduces confusion by providing consumers with labeling uniformity across state lines. It addresses the concerns of those who are opposed to genetically modified foods while not neglecting the fact that our nation's farmers and manufacturers grow and produce foods that are sold far and wide and not just within a state's borders.
Mr. Pompeo and Butterfield have been working tirelessly on a bipartisan basis in putting together a clear, understandable national framework that maintains FDA's current review process, codifies federal labeling standards and related requirements, establishes a certification process at the Department of Ag consistent with current organic program for the labeling of products as being produced or developed without the use of genetic engineering.
In conclusion, I strongly urge this subcommittee to support a voluntary, uniform, and national standard for labeling food products derived from biotech ingredients. The impact of not taking action would have a devastating effect on food and agriculture companies across the country, as well as farmers whose livelihoods depend on the freedom to conduct their business using the best methods available to them.
And one issue I've heard is that requiring GE Foods to have a special label would be inherently misleading because it would indicate that there was something different about those foods. So let me ask Mr. Jaffe, I know CSPI is a staunch supporter of strong food labeling. What are CSPI's views on that question?
CSPI has been a strong proponent of labeling as something very informative to consumers and important, but that labeling has to be truthful, neutral, and non-misleading. I think that's critical. We've also been a strong believer that only the most important information should be mandated by the government. So if we're talking about safety information, whether something's an allergen or, for example, would be something that if people don't know about that, they could end up in the hospital about that, or nutritional information, how much salt or how much calories are in it, because that has a direct relationship to their diet. Genetically engineered foods are, the current ones that are on the crop are safe. And so there's no safety or nutritional reason to label those. If we mandate everything on a label, the consumers don't know what is the most critical information. So for us, the things that are most critical are either safety information or nutritional information. This doesn't qualify there. So while we think and that we understand that consumers want information about this, we think that there should be ways to figure that out, less than mandatory government-imposed labels.
This bill is a great piece of legislation. It doesn't over-legislate, gives the consumer the right to know what they need to know, but allows American farmers, American food manufacturers to still produce the safest, healthiest food in the world that I would point out has increased yield, reduces tillage, reduces use of pesticides, many things that some of the people, very same people who are against any genetically engineered organism really also want at the end of the day.
I would say there's no need for a consumer to want to purchase non-GMO food, but there are consumers who want to do that. I think you do need a federal standard for setting what that means. If you ask the question, do you want GE labeling, most consumers say yes. If you ask them, do they want pesticides labeled, they say yes. If you want antibiotics labeled, they say yes. So, and as a consumer myself, if somebody offered me more information, why would I say no to that? So, but there was a Rutgers poll where they asked open-ended, what new information would you want on a label? And I believe it was 7% who said GM labeling. And again, when they asked people what do they want for all of those different things I just mentioned, about everybody said 70% for each of those.
FDA officials have repeatedly stated that the agency has no basis for concluding that bioengineered foods are different from other foods in any meaningful way. And the World Health Organization has confirmed that, quote, no effects on human health have been shown as a result of consumption of such foods, end quote. In fact, they can grow faster, resist diseases and drought, cost less, and prove more nutritious.
There is no scientific evidence that GE foods pose safety issues any different from non-GE foods. I have to admit, when I hear critics argue that GE foods are dangerous, I feel the same way I do when I hear people deny climate change, argue against vaccinating children, or say they aren't scientists when asked if they believe in evolution. So from a science or health perspective, there doesn't seem to be a compelling government interest in forcing a food company to label a food as made with or without genetic engineering.
One manufacturer calculates that 7 to 10% of non-Vermont product could be shipped to Vermont in error. That manufacturer will face penalties of $1,000 per day per product. For a large company that has 2,500 SKUs, it could translate to $175,000 or $250,000 in daily fines. From a supply chain and logistical perspective, this law really is a nightmare. U.S. consumers benefit from the safest and most efficient food supply in the world. I urge Congress to protect our national food system from an unnecessary patchwork of state labeling schemes that will hurt American employers and do nothing to protect consumers. Manufacturers have control of only so much of that supply chain. They turn it over to retailers and wholesalers who redistribute that product to stores, and then it's their job to make sure that product ends up where it's intended.
I'm a small government, local decision-making guy, but this is a place for the federal government to step forward.
You would be hard-pressed to go through a grocery store and not see the product of a lot of our voluntary marketing programs. Everything from USDA choice beef to grade A eggs to certified Angus beef to a lot of the claims that you'd see on particular products related to responsible use of antibiotics or humanely raised claims. All of those are voluntary activities. So these are companies that have decided to voluntarily differentiate themselves in the marketplace and utilize AMS as their third-party auditor.